Hello and welcome to TPCast number 91. I'm Layne.
I'm Kevin. I'm Kyle. And everyone dies at the end. Ugh, I finally say it.
Sorry. For those of you tuning in, welcome. For this episode, we're going to be going over the making of and behind the scenes of Marlin the Elite versus the Asteroid. So if you haven't seen this minor motion picture, go onto YouTube and go ahead and watch it, and then come back and listen to this, because we're going to be talking about the whole thing and what happens.
And if you haven't watched it, we do have another podcast that we did that is spoiler free if you want to listen to that one too.
That's episode 90, just FYI. So that's safe to listen to.
But this one is going to be spoiler full. So let's go.
All right. So we talked a bit about the impetus for this project, what got us into wanting to make it and do another machinima in our last podcast episode. So I'm not sure if we need to cover that a whole lot unless we have anything to add.
Well,
since
I think
then,
the only thing that maybe we couldn't really talk about was how when I first pitched the idea and we were, elaborating on it, we ran into a problem where, so Kyle and I had not seen the movie Armageddon, and Layne had, and Layne was like, that's actually very similar to Armageddon. So we had to do some rewrites of our pitch idea. But other than that, I think I still haven't seen Armageddon, so I can't tell you, but I feel like we probably fixed the problem because this feels like a very unique idea still.
it's still a lot like Armageddon,
okay,
honestly, but I feel like you could poke fun at that.
Yeah.
And we did with the Marlageddon tagline in the trailer.
Mm-hmm. But also, we didn't, like Kevin said, we haven't seen it, so this was an original idea to Kevin. Yeah. But also somebody else had that idea and made Armageddon. So
it's up to you on who did it better. You could just judge for yourself.
Also,
one has Bruce Willis, one has Ben Affleck. We didn't have Don't Want to Miss a Thing, so that's up to you if that's positive or negative.
Not having seen Armageddon, I can't confirm this, but I feel like we have the A-hole and the B-hole, which, in my opinion, is very funny. I think that worked out very well.
Yeah, they do not have that joke in Armageddon.
That level,
there's only one hole and they have to make it themselves.
Wow. Okay. So that level of wordplay that we did that just magically works out so well. Excellent. Yeah. Great stuff.
Quality middle school humor right there.
That reminds me. Well, also it's middle school humor at a college level. We were in middle school when we started making Marlin the Elite.
That's right. Yeah.
So it is.
So it's right on brand,
right, exactly.
Pretty much.
Also, that reminds me that one of the jokes that we put in this movie is one that we have wanted to make for years. Mm-hmm. And doing this movie gave us the opportunity to finally be okay, now we can do this. Mm-hmm. And I'll say what it was. So back in, I think it was episode 100, we had Private Parts come back, and he was making all these good jokes about...
This is 2015, 2016.
Yeah, I pitched a tent and camped out all night for this release, and all these good jokes. But there's one that we had that we never got to work in to a Marlin episode, which would be Private Parts in battle, and somebody being able to say, or Marlin being able to say, "Private Parts, you're exposed." And so we got to make that happen. Shoehorned it in there. Yeah. And so that made me very happy because that is a literally years old joke that we've been waiting to be able to do.
Yeah. And of course a lot more along with that.
Yeah,
as well.
We got some more in there too.
So I think one of the aspects of Kevin, your idea was the aspect of bringing characters that hadn't interacted before together into one group and having them have to work together. That was sort of like a concept from the one of the episodes in season 11 or
11. Was it 11?
It was either 10 or 11. It was where like Jerry and Schmo got stranded on an island.
Well, I don't want to so confidently say 11 and possibly be wrong. So you know what? I don't know either.
Yeah, but that's an aspect that's kind of always appealed to me, and so that was something that excited me about doing this, is kind of looking into our back catalog of characters and saying, okay, who might be fun to put together and have interact, and who might you like not be expecting to see, and then have it be fun to have them in there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you did well with the trailer, is kind of hide who, like how big certain characters are in this movie. So for example, like Snot is one of those guys who, he's been around for a while. He's been around since the Halo 3 days. He pops up every once in a while. He's always annoying as hell, no pun intended. And
that's why he's funny.
Yeah, so he's funny and he's fun to play. And then Grandpa, kind of the same thing. He's been around for a while. He pops up a little bit more often, but he's always so funny. And then, you know, like we were already talking about Private Parts. He's like, there's such richness there, stuff to like pull from. And then also one of my personal favorite characters from our back catalog is Jimbo Jamboon. And I always love just like being able to play him and give some more jokes. So bringing him in for me personally was really great. And I think I would say this movie has the best quality Jimbo Jamboon isms.
Yeah,
this one's for the boy.
Yeah, the whole stuff with him is all his dialogue with the group is really good.
Yeah. There's just like little throwaway lines too that are so funny.
Yeah. So we had all these characters like in mind, and we had more characters in mind that we were toying with having be in the group and stuff. But another thing that appealed to us is doing a cross game. I don't know what you would call it, like using a bunch of different games.
Yeah, multi-game.
Yeah, multi-game movie or something.
Media.
So we have Halo Reach, which we kind of have to start out in. Then we have Halo 2 Anniversary, which I think was the default like second one.
I feel like we did the most in Halo 2 Anniversary.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Halo Infinite, which we did want to try and use because of all the cool forging capabilities.
Yeah.
Which I personally hadn't tried out a whole lot to see what was possible. And even so, we were just doing relatively basic stuff in terms of what is possible with this.
Yeah, but you and Kyle built a whole a ship together.
Yeah, we can get into that, but real quick, Layne, wasn't there also some Halo 3 in this movie?
There was a tiny bit of Halo 3 in this movie. We mentioned it on the last podcast. Yeah. There is one shot from Halo 3 that was used in this movie, mainly out of necessity.
Should we say which one it is because it's a spoiler full podcast, or should we still gatekeep it?
I'd say let's let it out, but if you want to offer up a guess, feel free to guess and then come back and listen to this at a later time, but we will reveal it. So when things aren't looking good and looks like all hope is lost and the asteroid's going to come and hit the town, there's a siren that's going to go off as Alpine Springs panics, and we need a shot of just like a siren or whatever you call it, a bullhorn speaker thing, like a snap zoom in on that, And I was trying to jog my memory in terms of what maps featured that, and I don't think there was an option to forge it.
We looked through all the forge options. There was all the menus. You couldn't find exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah, so I was trying to rack my memory in terms of like where I'd seen one of those in Halo, because I knew they were around, and so I was asking you guys, like, do you remember what map one of these might be on? Because I know there's something. Yeah. I know it's somewhere. And eventually, it was discovered on the pit map in Halo 3. So just that quick shot of that siren is the shot from Halo 3.
Sneaky. I love it.
Yeah.
So we did a whole bunch of forging for the whole movie. There was only one map that we didn't forge, which we found online for Infinite, and that was the Countdown remake, which was kind of needed for the visual effects for that rocket taking off. But pretty much everything else we created or used like some prefabs from Halo Infinite, and then used that in the map making.
And of course, the map that we downloaded, we gave credit to.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there was also, so there's the really cool stuff that you can do with Infinite Forge, and there was Halo 2 Anniversary Forge, which was also very powerful. But even going back to Reach, we did some new maps, like we did the skyscraper, like penthouse.
Yeah, and because we hadn't used Reach through the Master Chief Collection before, previously all of this was, when we used Reach, it was done on the 360.
Yeah.
So because we are using MCC now for Halo Reach, we had a bunch of new forge options and a larger budget to work with. So there was a whole bunch of new like objects and stuff that we could use within Forge World.
Yeah, that was cool.
So that was very convenient in terms of building out the mission control area, the penthouse, the town hall,
and the little meeting area too, right, where they were going over the plan.
Oh yeah. That was sort of like, when we made it, that was sort of like built into the mission control area, but it was
around the corner.
Yeah, it was on the same map. And then moving into Anniversary, Halo 2 Anniversary, the whole Asteroid map.
And that's cool because that really was just about one huge map that we made. And so a lot of what you see, like where the lander is and they have their meeting with Grandpa, and where they meet Jimbo Jamboon, and where the beehill is, that's all one map that we made. And then I think the interior of the base where they're talking with Jimbo Jamboon, that was a separate map.
Yeah, and then we did another one for where the battle is, but where the battle took place was like a modified version of the Asteroid map that we had made.
Yeah, because we started out making the giant Asteroid map with kind of all the topography that we knew that we were going to need, and then also some extra stuff just in case. Like there was a whole like underground tunnel area that we didn't end up using. But then of course later on down the line, when we needed a battle area, like an outpost for the pirates, then we built onto the existing map
so
into a separate area for that.
When Marlin takes the warthog and makes a little jump into a little tiny boat that explodes, he's jumping off like where the lander was.
Yeah, like we had went and modified a ramp for him to drive off that.
Another thing that we should talk about while we're talking about the different games is how we had to be logistic about which characters.
Exactly. So that also played in to our selection of who was going to be in this movie, is because we knew that we wanted all these different games, and we knew that we wanted two different teams. One was going to be like the Infinite team, and the other was going to be the Halo 2 anniversary team. So it was kind of a matter of finding out what capabilities were in each game. Like, for instance, automatically elites could only be in Halo 2 anniversary. So Marlin had to be on that team.
With Snot and Grandpa.
Yeah. So that left only Spartans that could be used for Infinite.
Yeah. And that also meant that only Marlin's team could interact with Jimbo and the other aliens.
Yeah, exactly. So that left the pirates, which we mainly did in Infinite since they were pretty much going to be all human. So we could do most of it in Infinite.
And we had some AI extras as well.
Yeah, that feature came out just in time to be utilized, just so we could fill out that pirate ship some more. So that did come into consideration in terms of what characters we chose and who got to interact with who. And we tried to stretch it as much as possible in terms of trying to blend the two kind of seamlessly. At least in terms of Snot kind of being able to go back and forth because they have that infinite elite pieces.
And you could change the color of the elite, but I think the default for that kind of shape where he's lying down was yellow, and I don't think we changed it at all. I think it looked fine.
Yeah, I don't recall doing that.
We had a tough time coming up with the name Pirate Knight.
Yeah, I think we made a big long list of something that would remind you of not kryptonite, carbonite, but not, it had to make sense for what we were doing and not be a straight ripoff. And then,
or at least be a pirate themed ripoff.
Something that also I thought was kind of fun, talking about having different teams. We have the A team and the B team, and so just hearing that, you assume that the A team is going to be the hero team that gets to get everything done, and it's almost like the A story, and yet the B team is our A story, and the B team is the A story. The A team is the B story, who doesn't actually really get anything done because the lander gets stolen immediately, and the bomb, they don't even have it.
You know what? Another thing that was really interesting that I don't think we had ever done before is both Kyle and Layne auditioned to play a character.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So for the character of Commander PP, Captain Chalupa. Captain Chalupa. So I forget how the thought process was. I think it was because I was doing a lot of characters on B team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were 3 out of the 4 characters.
Yeah. So I think I felt like you should kind of have that character at first. So we were trying different things in terms of how he should sound because we didn't have any plans going into it.
Yeah, I think I was sort of like, when we were filming it, I was doing like the puppeteering and just using a regular voice. But I thought that he should have something kind of unique and funny. And so Layne and I both had different ideas for what it could be. Because I think I was okay playing him, but I didn't really want to because I don't like doing voiceovers. So I was kind of hoping that we would end up liking what Layne did. But then with my idea, when I first started recording the first line, it was so funny that I completely broke, and it took quite a few tries to get it.
I don't even remember what was your voice.
Well, we actually have it on the blooper reel, I think.
Yeah, it's so we do have outtakes, voiceover outtakes that we'll be putting out eventually. And I also do have pretty much the chunk of what we did record, which is pretty much the first scene where you see Captain Chalupa when Commander PP walks in and fills him in about Snot. So I do have that your version of that.
So my take on the character was inspired by a TikTok actually that Kevin had showed me.
Oh, that's right.
It was these 2 guys. I mean, how would you describe it? They were these 2 guys that were like doing a stupid voice, but they were like acting as if they were like the most nerdy dweeb kind of guy. Yeah. And so my character was like, what if this guy who is the leader of the pirates has just this derpy like nerd voice?
That's right. I remember that now.
And then with Layne's version, well, do you remember your inspiration?
I know. So I can't remember exactly who maybe directly influenced it, but I think so. We had your voice, and then I think you were kind of asking me if like there was anything I could do, and then I just threw out my version of a New Zealand accent. I think roughly Taika Waititi-esque. And so
your Kiwi accent.
Yeah. Like, again, doing my best, not claiming to be accurate. This is the space version, the space Kiwi. So after we had our two voices, I was having a hard time deciding which was better, because Kyle's was, I mean, so funny that he was cracking up constantly. Yeah. So we both ended up recording that whole scene, and then we kind of A and B'd it and auditioned it. And then I think I kind of left it up to the two of you in terms of what do you guys think?
Yeah, so I remember I thought what I did was super funny, but like I said, I hate doing voiceovers, and I knew that this guy was going to have a monologue, and I didn't. I was like, oh, if I could just not do this, that would be great. And I had a legit reason too, which is I thought sort of by the end of the scene, the way that I had portrayed the character made him a lot less likable than Layne's version. And even though he is sort of a villain, I thought it was the wrong kind of unlikable. Whereas Layne's character was somebody that you wanted to keep watching and seeing how it was going to turn out. So even though you might be feeling like the way we're describing it, you're missing out on something funny, I think you probably would have been annoyed with my character had I done the entire movie.
I may have voted for Layne's version out of sympathy for Kyle and maybe for myself, because I know sitting through Kyle doing voiceovers is not the most fun, and I'm always here for that. So, but also like Layne's version was also just great. So it worked out.
So first of all, you're making it sound like I'm unpleasant to be around. I think it's just because you get bored when it's not your turn to do something.
Yeah, well, again, that was the first time that we went through and had that sort of thing happen.
But anyway, I guess you'll be able to see it or hear it
eventually. Yeah. But speaking of the pirate ship, for Infinite, we forged the Asteroid set.
Everything you saw in Infinite, we forged it,
and that included the pirate ship that we made.
Yes, so that was me and Layne over Xbox Live, because you can't like split screen forge for some reason.
Yeah. Too intensive, I guess.
And I remember thinking that we had the opportunity to do something really cool, because with Infinite Forge being the most powerful, you have all these cool shapes and whatnot available to you. And I remember just like, as we were beginning the forge process, I would just like have Google image pirate ship, and I was just looking at ships. So you're like, okay, we can do like the mast like this, and the sails and whatnot. And I think, we are not the most talented forgers in the world. Far from it. It's
pretty much like we only forge when I feel like we have like something to build.
Yeah.
So
you didn't practice by making a bunch of cool maps.
I think with the pirate ship, we ended up with something that you can look at it and say, yeah, that's definitely a pirate ship. But there are other people who could do it a lot better. But it was fun to do, and it gave us some experience working in Infinite Forge. But there was also like the entire Asteroid, which kind of like with the Halo 2 anniversary version, we made something gigantic with a lot of different areas for stuff that we could have used that we didn't end up using. But I also feel like that helps it even just watching it helps it feel like it's this gigantic asteroid that they're exploring for the first time.
And that one was all one map.
Yeah.
The pirate ship, right? Wasn't that
the pirate ship was a separate map, but
right.
I think you prefabbed it and were able to
load
it
there
in.
was like that loading dock area, and then the base, and then the landing zone, and then that little like thing that they walked up on, that bluff there. That was all one map, right?
Yeah, so what we did is like Kyle said, we built this giant asteroid map with like, you know, the laser base on it and such, and the spot where the A-team lands. And then we did a separate map with the pirate ship just floating in space because, you know, we kind of knew we'd need it flying around. But then we also needed some shots of the pirate ship docked on that same asteroid set. So then what I went and did afterwards, after we had built the pirate ship, is I went back into the asteroid set that we did, and I took the kind of like a chunk hanging off the edge of the asteroid and took all those pieces and made a prefab out of them. And then went back and made like a duplicate copy of the pirate ship map and put that prefab in there next to the pirate ship and had that be the area where it was docked. So then we had these this docked version of the map, which just had a chunk of the asteroid on it. So then for the wide shot, I did a composite, taking the pirate ship and the chunk of asteroid and merging it with the rest of the map that we had already built. But I think that was only for like one shot maybe. And then the rest of it, we were able to just
that goes into
use that
one
map.
shot. Something else that we did that I thought was a super, super funny idea, and I forget whose idea it was. Might have been mine. But just to have the pirate ship floating on a single piece of water.
That was actually mine.
Okay, yeah, it was good idea, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's so funny because you have this like literally square or maybe like a slightly rectangle piece of flat
water.
That
the pirate ship is floating on in space the entire time.
And when you see the pirate ship moving, the water is just moving with it. It's not like it's sailing over the water. That's so funny.
That's
exactly my kind of humor.
Yeah. It was it did become a pain for green screen shots to kind of mat around that. But it was definitely worth it. It was just such a funny visual that it had to be done. So the pirate ship we forged that. Any other Infinite stuff? I think it was pretty much just like that whole asteroid area.
Talk about the filming
inclusive
of the Infinite stuff, because it was so different from anything else that we've done.
Yeah, so we pretty much filmed everything else first, and
we filmed it the way we usually do.
Yeah,
which is the three of us here
in one room
on one screen on one Xbox.
Yeah, split screen style, and then afterwards I would go into theater mode and capture everything that was needed. So going over to Infinite, we did all the other game stuff, and then we could just focus on the Infinite stuff. And so it was a lot of in the end, a lot of trial and error in terms of what Infinite could do and
would let you do.
And it wasn't necessarily stuff that would be apparent.
That's
to
right.
Put it lightly.
We tried doing it the normal
because
way.
It doesn't seem like they made a lot of Infinite choices with machinima in mind.
That in a broad term, but also just in kind of a basic I don't know what we say, like bug testing mentality.
Yeah.
Because Halo Infinite has the theater mode, but it is not very usable at all. And the issue that we ran into is we went, first of all, when selecting the characters that we were using for Infinite, we're like, okay, so we have all these pirate guys that we're going to use. we have pretty much the two principal pirates, and then we have Lemon Man and Cotton Swab. So we had to make sure that we had the right armors for those. So we had to go through and find out, okay, which armor could be used for certain characters. And luckily, this was happening after stuff started to become cross-core. So we thought, okay, we could kind of, mix and match and choose what chest piece that we want and what headpiece, helmet that we want and stuff. And so we went in to go film kind of like our first session of shooting. But then upon reviewing the footage in theater mode, it became apparent that the armor glitched out when you rewound the film at all. So that it's almost like the top coating of the armor disappeared and you just saw like the under chunk of armor, or it defaulted to a different armor, which
you can't even do in the game, right?
Yeah,
it's like a total glitch.
Yeah, and it was like a different color. It would end up being the wrong color.
And with the way that you shoot, that makes the footage unusable, because you would have to start anytime you want to do a new shot, you'd have to basically quit the theater and start over, and it has to load all that stuff.
Yeah. And then there was also an issue of weapon lowering. So in theater mode, I guess like I should say in the default game mode, there's not a way to lower your weapon. You have to go in, and there is like a forge way to script it so that when you press a button, your weapon lowers. But then in theater mode, that didn't translate, and so it would be inconsistent in terms of pressing the button and having someone lower their weapon. So more times than not, I think it was another instance of when things were rewound, that the weapon lowering in-game wouldn't translate when you watched it back in theater, and your weapon was just stayed raised. So after that first day of shooting, it became apparent, okay, this isn't going to work. So we had to go back, and I did some pickup shots for just to fix that first day that we did. But then moving forward, what we did is we used something else that shipped with the game, which is what they call machinima mode, that you just do in a custom game in real time. And they had this with Halo 5, but we didn't end up using that a whole lot, mainly because we didn't use Halo 5 pretty much at all. I think just for one thing. So we resorted to using that. The only thing with that is that you need a dedicated camera person to do that. It sort of reverts back to the Halo 2 style of filming stuff, where you have to act it out in real time, and you can't go back and like rewind or do anything. So that meant that we did that over Xbox Live. So you guys, Kevin and Kyle, you guys were at your Xbox, and I was at my Xbox being the camera person. So that presented another challenge, because now instead of being able to use like 4 controllers, we're down to using maximum of 3 controllers, I think, for one scene, and 2 of those could be manned by you. The other could just be like an extra body or something, or maybe be moved around, because we kind of do that at some point. So then that presented a whole nother challenge in terms of blocking stuff and figuring out, who was going to be where, and like, okay, so-and-so could be in the scene and we'll film that together, and like another character could be in their own shot or be matted into another shot. to try and make it seem seamless. So in terms of planning, that kind of was a bit of an effort to kind of put those puzzle pieces together.
And it was a lot more like doing an actual like live action film, because we had, like you had your shots that you needed, we had our quote camera, we had the actors, and we had to block everything, and we had to do multiple takes, and we had to do multiple camera angles of the same scene. So it felt totally different and a lot more like actually filming something with a crew.
Yeah, because doing it in Infinite, like you would act out something, and then if you want to move the camera around, you got to act it out again. Whereas if we did this in Halo 3 Reach or Halo 2 Anniversary, we could just do the scene once together, and then Layne could go into theater later and capture it, rewind, and do a bunch of different angles. So doing it in Infinite definitely took longer, because you'd have to do everything multiple times to get your multiple angles. But it was cool challenge, and it ends up looking really cool because Infinite looks awesome, especially in Glorious HQ.
Yeah, with all the lighting effects, that definitely made things look really nice. And for all the logistical difficulties in doing this, the one upside was that while it took longer to film, pretty much everything that I would do after you guys left in terms of picking angles and capturing stuff was already done. So for me, it was, in terms of filming and capturing, it was easier probably.
Yeah, your footage was already there. You could go straight to editing rather than having that middle capture stage.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one more thing I want to talk about with Halo Infinite, which is just a kind of a funny side thing that we didn't realize. But like, when you have characters walking on terrain that you made, sometimes their legs look really strange, and we didn't realize that until we started filming. And so there's this one part where Lemon Man and Cotton Swab are going, I think it's from the lander into the base, or vice versa?
It happened both times. Yeah. So this is at the very end when they land in the lander and are going into the base to shoot the laser and then leaving.
And just whatever, for some reason, that particular terrain was so bad for the Spartan walking animation, and they looked so funny and ridiculous that what Layne ended up doing was like a super far away shot where you can barely see them, but like look closely at that. And
it's like
zoom way in and look at their legs. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's like their feet get shoved up by their knees.
But that also happened earlier when they were like looking over into the pirate area, and they're like, oh, space pirates, we've dealt with them before. And that was, I think, when we first noticed it, and we were like, okay, now we have to kind of shoot this carefully to avoid that. But yeah, it is super funny. And then there's something else I want to talk about in Infinite. Doing it that way with doing it more like a traditional shoot, it does sort of give you the opportunity, I felt like, to kind of like workshop and perfect your performance. Because if we do it just do one big take, that doesn't give you the opportunity to work on it or make it better. So that is also something that I feel like doing it in Infinite that way was a plus.
But for the most part, it presented many challenges, and we'll probably never do that again.
Yeah, or it doesn't put you on to doing this sorts of stuff in Infinite.
We're so used to doing it the other way too.
Yeah, and it's also a matter of having these features that are supposedly there, and then have them not perform as they're supposed to, and you figuring out what the capabilities are. Rather than having, them all be there.
Something else really cool about Infinite, or not just Infinite, but I think the work that you did in the visual effects, is some of the green screen stuff. Like, there was something that we did in green screen, and then as we were watching like the finished version, I think, Kevin, you said like out loud, oh my god, I forgot that was green screen, it looks so good. Which is when Lemon Man is pushing snot in Pyronite off the ship. That was not done on the ship because we couldn't get that Pyronite piece to move with him.
There's probably I'm sure there is some sort of a way that you could script it to move.
We're not smart enough for that.
Yeah. And so I started to experiment with that a little bit, but the way that it was, because the block that we made was a prefab, and at least at the time of shooting, there was some sort of restriction where like a certain type of prefab couldn't be moved or something like that. So I figured it was just easier to green screen it. Having Lemon Man kind of push against a stationary block and then move the camera for the green screen shot. And then when it's laid over a plate of the pirate ship, it looks like he's moving and pushing snot.
Yeah, the effects in this movie are just incredible, and they're all Layne.
That's right. And for all the benefits of, or the things that appealed to me about the project in terms of having those like disparate characters like interacting and the fun that presented, it was definitely a premise that was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of visual effects, or
because it's
a lot of
it was this like sci-fi
compositing that's going to be involved in this. And there was, this is probably the most effects intensive thing that I've done. But for all the gripes and moans I've had about Infinite and that experience, the good thing about Infinite is that it's great for kind of capturing green screen assets. And with the forging capabilities, so many people have made different objects that then you could put in front of a green screen and then move the camera around and then move into, other shots. So like pretty much most of the shots of the asteroid, like flying towards the planet, most of that was green screen. The rocket taking off, so the Saber was captured. It was a Saber prefab that someone had built in Infinite. And so then I put that in front of a green screen and good old-fashioned Star Wars model style, then moved the camera, to and away from the ship, and then was able to composite that over footage of it, lifting off and then also flying through space and getting all sorts of different angles. What other? There's so much stuff like that in it. For the scene when the town panicked, that was kind of a challenge that I wanted to do, is to get one master shot of everything going crazy. So I shot a bunch of green screen plates of AI Marines like running away, and some shots of me moving as Spartans, like different directions, and Warthogs driving, and then blending that all together.
There was also, I guess it wasn't all like stuff you did in Infinite, but then like the logo, the movie that moves, that was another visual effect thing that you made.
Yeah, doing all kind of the the 3D titles, the new TP logo that's at the top. That was done in motion. So making themes seem a little fancy.
Would you guys like to talk about in more detail our search for a title?
Sure. In that it was long and kind of found. The title was found out of necessity, I guess. Or,
well, when I pitched the movie, I pitched it as a minor motion picture, which I thought was funny, like a funny way of saying a short film, because I had also pitched it as a short film. Like, we did a feature film, that was a lot of work. Let's not do that much work again, but let's also do something more than just an episode. So it'll be a short film, and we can call it Marlin the Elite, a minor motion picture, or just kind of refer to it as that. It's like a working title. But I did like that as a title if it came down to it. But we also wanted maybe something a little bit more specific. And then I also thought what we ended up with, Marlin the Elite versus the Asteroid, is really cool, and it feels like it'll draw you in, like, oh, what's that? But then we also just threw out so many different ideas.
I think we had a long list, and we had narrowed it down to like 4 or something.
Yeah.
And
I don't even remember any of the other
one
ones.
Was like something Strikes Back.
Yeah, I remember it was Marlin the Elite Space Strikes Back.
Right.
So that was the number 2 in this case. So it was going to be, I think, what we got or that.
Yeah.
But yeah, then there was, a bunch of others that we threw out, and we're seeing what stuck.
I like what we came up with, though.
Yeah.
I mean, what we ended up with, I think, fits very well.
One character that we talked about, kind of the returning characters, in terms of like Snot, Grandpa, all of those. We haven't talked about, I think we talks about the pirates. Those are new characters. Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about,
the other brand
I guess I'm not sure if he's the main villain, but he is one of the antagonists. Mm-hmm. And that's Mike deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, Mike deGrasse Tyson, I think, was another idea of mine that was like, let's just take Mike Tyson and, oh my God, what's his first name? Neil deGrasse Tyson. Combine those names.
Create a sort of a Venn diagram of where they overlap.
And take the scientist, but give him the lisp. And so we called him the world's top scientist, but then later I had thought of like, oh, that'd be funny to call him the heavyweight scientist of the world. But I think we had already recorded all the dialogue at that point. So Layne just added it as like a chyron in the beginning, the news segment, right? They call him, they label him heavyweight scientist of the world. So we did get that little joke in there. But yeah, that was fun to have a brand new villain and have him be very very smart and very science-y, but also have a Mike Tyson lisp.
Yeah, very, very funny having him be the conniving, ego-driven personality.
Yeah, and then that scene where he comes in with the golf club and just destroys everything. He's like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I have a great idea. I know how to do this. And then just destroys everything.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out, because we know, like, they're going to come in and somehow sabotage mission control and upset the plan so that the bomb gets disabled. But we didn't know how. And then it was thrown out there.
Yeah.
Have them just smash everything. Yeah, and that turned out to be the right decision.
Sometimes it's the simplest decision is the right one. Just destroy it.
Yeah, so that was a fun addition, and definitely something that purposely was kept out of the trailer.
Yeah, and speaking of like that the mission control area, the joke with the calculator is so, in my opinion, again, that's my type of humor, so funny. And it brings back something that we've used a few times. We use it sparingly because it's very funny. You don't want to overuse it. But that robot voice, which has been used, I want to say 2 other times, right? It was used... Yeah. What?
It was 2 other times.
Yeah, 2 times. It was used in the Smart App episode of Season 11 when Marlin accidentally releases the game and it says game released. And then it was used, I don't know what season it was, but the Land World episode where Layne is playing is Land Thomas, right? And he gives a date for when it's going to open, but he doesn't know when it is, so he just mouths it, and then a robot voice says Saturday, whatever. So like that robot voice we just love. And the idea of having a calculator say 1 + 1 equals, and then like warning overheating or something.
Yeah. It's funny on multiple levels because, first of all, the robot voice is always, like, if I think of the hardest I've ever laughed watching a Marlin episode, it's probably the land world moment and the game released. And it makes me laugh out loud every single time. So I was like, of course, we got to do something funny. And it's so funny.
Yeah, just like the way that the robot voice talks and sounds adds to it because it's already funny.
Another reason I think that moment is so funny in this movie is because they're like, let me do some quick calculations. And they start out with 1 + 1. It's like...
And like in context, it kind of makes sense why you would need to add 1 + 1. And then also just like that they are very, smart scientists, and they're doing that calculation, and then it overheats their calculator. So funny. I just love that moment.
I'm thinking back to all the other visual effects now, like the lander landing,
the asteroid splitting apart.
That's
a great shot.
For when. Yeah, it split apart. For Halo 2 anniversary, we went in to the giant asteroid map that we made, and then went in and modified it and made that giant ravine that they could go in and jump over and stuff. And so then that was used for kind of the shot of it splitting apart with added elements. That again I filmed in Infinite of like rock walls against a green screen separating, and I'll post like a visual effects video at some point that's gonna show a lot of this.
There was also the like the cockpit of the ship that they blasted off in.
Yeah, like the window that had to be taken out. There was that one cool shot that I wanted to do of it starting in the ship and then having the camera fly out of the ship to show it flying towards the asteroid. So I thought that turned out well. Then also, a lot of stuff that hopefully you don't notice, and mainly in terms of, like I was mentioning, the logistics of having multiple characters in a scene where it wouldn't otherwise be possible with just the three of us. Like one of those is there's like one shot towards the beginning of the movie as the team is walking across a gangplank in the countdown map, and they're kind of walking in front of the Saber across a catwalk. And so with the amount of characters we had in there, we were one person short, or one controller short. So Lemon Man had to be added into that at the end.
The town hall too. You have a shot of
and the town hall. Just filling that out with more crowds of people, to at least get it closer to having it be like a filled out room. So yeah, and a lot of other characters we were able to sneak into that scene, and have them sort of get an appearance within. Not having to put them in the rest of the episode as well. Let's see. So there was all the visual effects. Obviously, then there's all like the editing and stuff that goes along with it. We knew kind of the ballpark that we had for this was like 45 minutes or so. And I think we talked about this in the last podcast episode that we did. But pretty much, we didn't want it to be over an hour. I was prepared to, if needed, trim some fat and cut out some scenes in the event that our cut did go over an hour. But luckily it worked out just right where we hit the 50-minute mark and we didn't have to eliminate anything that we had already filmed.
Yeah, so the Marlin the Elite, the movie, did have a couple of deleted scenes. But when you watch Marlin the Elite versus the Asteroid, you're seeing everything. You're seeing the whole vision.
Yeah, we didn't really cut anything, did we?
I don't think so. If anything, it might have just been like small stuff, like a few lines or
I think we watched through the whole movie and we're like, you know what, this is unnecessary or it doesn't make sense, so we can cut it. But there's not like a whole scene that got cut.
Yeah.
What we did do was kind of switch around where some of the scenes were, because we did like okay, the movie's almost done, let's watch through it and make sure we like it, and had some issues with some of, I don't want to say pacing, but like, oh, we haven't seen these characters in a long time. Can we shuffle some of these scenes around? And I think what we ended up with was feels a lot better than how it started.
Yeah. So, yeah, didn't have to do any of those cuts that I was prepared to do, so that it didn't turn into a semi-major motion picture from a minor motion picture. So we did all that. We watched it and got our cut, and then that's when the scoring started. So like with the movie, most of this movie was scored by me with original music. I did intend to use recycle cues from like past episodes and maybe some from the first movie. And I did end up doing that a little bit, but not quite to the extent of that I was expecting. It just became at a point easier to write all new stuff that was tailored to what was on screen rather than chopping up stuff and trying to make it work. I just felt like it wasn't all that much more time intensive to write original stuff, and then it would be tailor-made for what was happening. So as a consequence, there's a lot of new music that everyone can hear. So the soundtrack is available if you wanted to hear it in that form as well. Otherwise, you could just enjoy it with the movie, how it was originally composed and intended for. What else? Is there any other things that you can think of in terms of the creative process?
Just Layne's dialogue as Grandpa.
Yeah, that one scene especially where he pops out of the lander, I had fun doing, because as is kind of become our workflow as we're controlling the characters in game. We're also kind of saying the lines and recording like a voice memo track of us saying the lines, so that's something that I could edit to later. So while we had those rough lines, it was fun to then go and embellish them and make them just a little bit better.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the traditions of every Marlin episode and the movie is that after the credits there's something fun that was usually in the show. It was like some kind of blooper from filming where something would explode or we'd kill each other or something fun. And then the movie, we had the funny idea of like what was it like actually shooting the fake movie within the movie. But for this one, it was kind of like up in the air the whole time, and we didn't know. I don't think throughout the whole filming we didn't have an idea for like, oh, what could we do as like a tag, like an in-universe thing. So yeah, it was sort of left up to Layne to surprise us with what's going to be after the credits, if you want to talk about that moment.
Yeah, so that was just an example that I found of our temp track, which you could hear up against what we were filming, and it's all playing at the same time. So that was a fun moment that I found that I just happened to have footage for as well that could line up and sync up perfectly. And there were other kind of like more of like our usual outtakes that I was toying with using in terms of like a big explosion or a funny ragdoll or something like that. But because we hadn't had something like this before, it felt like it was the right choice.
Good look behind the scenes.
Yeah, and kind of the funny stuff that goes on when you're trying to film.
So speaking of the temp track, something else that happened while we were doing that filming with the temp track that ended up being really funny was when we were doing the scene in the town square in Alpine Springs where Kevin will say, we're saved, or my name isn't Shane Pubes. And then I was like, woohoo, what? And that was just an ad lib that I did. And it was so funny, that temp version of it, that when it came time to record it, I felt like I couldn't get it right. And I was like, okay, Layne, play it for me. Play it again so I can hear it and try to get it right exactly, because it was so good. And then I was like, is there any way you can just like boost the quality and just put the temp one in? Because it's so much better than anything I can do right now, because it just had the energy of the ad lib and doing it for the first time. But then like Kevin, I think, broke and laughed immediately. So it just couldn't work. So I just had to find a way to get it right.
You got really close.
I got really close, but just so you guys know, you are missing out on an even better performance, which is the one I did when I thought of it.
Accurate.
And I don't think that's in the blooper reel.
No. Mm-mm.
Although, can we say that one of the quote potential titles for the movie that I think Kyle threw out was Marlin the Elite saving Shane Pubes?
To me, that's the sort of thing that is like right up my alley in terms of humor, even though I know like it's not like a realistic feasible thing to call the movie and have people like want to watch it.
But I remember watching you and seeing that you had a moment where you actually considered it.
I'm like, this is so funny. Could we get away with it? Just having it be called that and then watching the whole movie only to get to the end.
That was something else I was thinking. It's like the whole time you're watching it, you're like, what? when is it going to get to finding out what the Shane Pubes thing means? And then it's just a throwaway line. We're saved. Or my name
isn't Shane Pubes.
I feel like in like a perfect world that could be pulled off.
Yeah. This is not a perfect world.
Unfortunately, no. But that was a really funny idea.
Yeah.
And had me laughing.
So once again, you guys are missing out on an even better title.
So a lot of funny stuff happened, while filming, while doing voiceovers, and sometimes it was a challenge to do stuff. Especially I remember Snot trying to get him to fall onto the Hornet to have him be taken up by the pirates.
Yeah, that was one of those things that was like, it's such a funny idea, we have to pull it off. And then when it comes time to do it, you're like, ugh, why did we have to have this funny idea?
Oh, and that reminds me of another like Jimbo Jamboon throwaway line that was so funny, which is like when he gets captured and he's like, well, he's gone, and this time for good.
Yeah.
It's like, you've inspired me to not care if you say them.
You've inspired me to not care.
Yeah, so that took a lot of tries. Then I remember the whole concept of, in that same scene, having the Hornet poke up and down from behind the cliff, shooting at the aliens.
Oh, and one of the aliens has a sword, and he's just like swiping at the air.
Like, we're so bad at this.
Yeah, just little visual gags. So good. We're really tooting our own horns here, but what else are we gonna do?
After making 110 episodes and a movie, I think it's safe to say that we're good at this.
We know what we're doing, exactly.
I'd at least hope that it kind of comes across. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that we feel like we're missing out on? Any other insight that you guys can think of?
I would just like to say that maybe my favorite line in the whole movie is another one that we came up with really early, like before we even started shooting, that I'm also very proud of, which is when Private Parts blows off two dudes at once.
Yeah, that was another one of those lines that we had to kind of like work up towards.
It's worth creating a little set piece for.
Yeah, and I had, as you were saying that, I just remembered another thing that has now escaped me. So, it was coming up with the names for Captain Chalupa and Commander PP, and like getting to the realization of like Layne has approved it, and like, wow, we're really gonna have a character named Commander PP. But sometimes when something's funny
middle
enough,
school humor once again.
When something's funny enough, sometimes Layne will relent and understand. Like with the Shane Pubes thing, he was close. We almost got in there.
We may be adult men in our 30s, but we're still boys who think Poo Poo Jacks is funny. So we can have a guy named Commander PP and Shane Pubes.
And Captain Chalupa.
Captain Chalupa, yeah.
Man, Taco Bell sounds really good right now, doesn't it?
There's also the asteroid ending. I think that was another concept I had. I think I was.
You're talking about when the asteroid or a piece of asteroid lands on the mayor.
Yeah, that was another one of those things where I think after you brought out the concept and we kind of worked out the story, it was established, okay, the last shot of the movie is going to be either the mayor by himself or the mayor and Tyson running, and they just get smashed by the biggest boulder.
Yeah, we had to do a few takes of it to get it right and like reset. But like how far away they flew, if you go back and watch that shot and just watch how far they fly, it's so funny.
And that was also because it was going to be so funny, not just to watch, but probably to do as well, that you wanted that to be the last thing that we filmed after we finished everything else.
Yeah, I did want to have that be the cherry on top.
So it's the last part of the movie, and it's the last thing we did. And something that also reminded me of something that I think was your idea, Layne, was that after the climax, the movie really just ends super fast. Like there's not some big long wind down, which I think was a good way to do it.
Yeah, instead of like having that resolution take place like on the spaceship rather than have them going back to the town and then going through the things are back to normal again. That aspect is more along the lines of what we would do in like an episode rather than a movie or something. There's also the pirate ship getting unceremoniously destroyed by the laser.
That was so funny. I don't think I even knew that we were going to do that. I think that was something that
Layne surprised us with when showing it to us.
Yeah, it was something. Because that was mainly, in execution, that was all like a visual effect. But we were, toying like, okay, A-Team is being pursued by the pirates. We got to have some sort of ending for the pirates. Most likely where they end up getting destroyed.
Isn't there some line that like the captain says right before it happens?
Yeah, too? It's like, it's a good thing we had the way that joint laser, and then he gets interrupted by the laser. So I think, Kevin, you had the idea of like, how about they just get blown up by the laser?
Because there had to be some sort of definitive. If they're the villains, they got to go somehow.
Yeah, and once again, the simplest answer, just like with destroying the whatever that room was, the mission control, that just simply getting destroyed is the simplest and best solution.
Is there anything? Have we covered everything?
I feel like we did.
Yeah, I feel like we have.
Anything else? So we hope that everyone here has enjoyed getting another Marlin taste after all these years. So I know it's been quite a while since we put another machinima out, and like we had gone into in the last podcast, it was something that we were felt the need for doing again. And as usual, I think it grew in scope and complexity from what we were intending. I think, it was definitely more work than I was anticipating, but hopefully that got translated into the final product, and hopefully y'all found it very enjoyable.
I also think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but we outlasted Red versus Blue Suckers.
I don't like to gloat.
I'll do it for you, Layne.
I'll leave that to you, Kyle. Yeah. So, I think that's about it. So from this point, there's, like I was kind of mentioning, there's going to be lots of kind of behind the scenes content coming out for this, outtakes, a visual effects reel. The soundtrack is out right now that you can go listen to. So you can look forward to that. That'll all be coming out in the coming weeks and months. So you can look forward to that. And if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can feel free to do that. youtube.com/Thomas Productions. That's the easiest way to see all of that when it comes out.
Yeah, and don't forget to, smash that like button and leave a comment and
smash it 2015 style.
Yeah, smash the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you never miss a post.
Exactly. We all know how this works.
Yeah. Leave a comment. What was your favorite part? What was your favorite line?
Which joke that I came up with was your favorite?
Yeah, and make a separate comment for which joke I came up with was your favorite, and then another separate comment for which of Layne's jokes was your favorite.
Exactly. That's how we know that you guys really, really liked it.
Yeah. And then maybe a separate comment about what was, your favorite aspect of the movie. Was it, the music or the effects, the editing, the directing, the acting?
If everyone who watches the movie just leaves 4 comments, I think we'll really blow up.
Yeah. Like, comment, subscribe.
We put a lot of work into this, and it is hard work, but it's so much fun. So you could pay us back with a comment, or at least a like. I mean, come on, guys.
All right. So, with that being said, we hope you guys have enjoyed this behind the scenes look, and hopefully you'll enjoy all the stuff yet to come regarding Marlin the Elite versus the Asteroid. But mainly, we hope you enjoyed Marlin the Elite versus the Asteroid. So, to leave it off there, I'm Layne.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Kyle, and everyone lives at the end, by the way.
Do they?
Well, not everyone.
All the good guys.
Woo! Existential crisis over! We're saved! Or my name isn't Shane Pughes. Woohoo! What?